So this is my new project for this year, the straw bales. Now this isn't a new technique, it has been used all over the world with varying success. But this year I want to give this a go. I've got a few areas at the moment I can't plant into, and I think these straw bales will be the perfect way to grow in areas I can't actually make a bed from. Now, straw bale gardening isn't as simple as just planting into these straw bales. They need to be prepared. So with the added cost of the fertiliser and a couple of weeks of prep time, I'll have a cheap method of growing almost any crops that I would like to grow in this straw bale. Now when it comes to straw bales, you want to make sure that it's starting to decompose and have plenty of food within the middle. Adding the fertilisers and adding the food and plenty of water will give it a really good start to decompose. In fact, your straw bale may get quite warm as it's starting to compost down in the middle. And because of that reason, I am actually thinking of using one of these in my greenhouse to maybe keep some of my seeds warm through the evening. Now it won't stay warm for very long, and within a couple of very short weeks, this will be ready to be planted into. But the last thing you want to do is after the prep and plant before this is cooled down somewhat. Otherwise you may find whatever you're trying to grow in these may actually get damaged roots. Now most of the crops that people grow in this kind of thing is things like your peppers, your tomatoes, and sometimes even squashes. I'm hoping to grow some sweet potatoes in mine, one in the greenhouse and one out here to give it a bit of a trial, and maybe a squash or something else. I haven't quite decided what I'm going to be growing in mine. Just bear in mind though, because of the actual height of the straw bales, things like corns and anything tall is just going to topple over, so maybe not practical for anything that is tall growing. Also, maybe not the greatest for any kind of root crops that don't like disturbance, like your carrots or your parsnips. But I have seen some fantastic crops out of these, mainly obviously from America, where the sweet potato grows much better than here in most of the country. But I've seen some really great crops of sweet potato grown in straw. So that is something I'm going to give a try this year. Now when it comes into growing on your straw bales, you've got your strings that are holding it together. You want to keep that on. Now most people will advise to grow against the actual straw. So this straw is all facing down and the top area is all open. This will make planting an awful lot easier when it comes down to it. So I'm going to have mine this side, and hopefully, fingers crossed, it won't be any issues. Now when you're conditioning your straw bales, you need to make sure that you're doing it a couple of weeks before it's needed. That's why I'm going to make a start on mine today. Now when it comes to getting this ready, all I'm going to use is a high nitrogen fertiliser and some blood, fish and bone at a later date, but it goes over several days. So on day one, it is a cup of high nitrogen fertiliser, and a good gallon of water, about 4 litres or a watering can's worth. Now I'm using the granulars here. I would rather use a powdered form, but I couldn't find anything that was suitable because I'm just using lawn fertiliser, and majority of them have weed killer or moss killer, and that's not something I want. Now I want to make sure that this is soaked all the way through, just to help that start that decomposition. So day 2 of this, all I'm going to do is add another gallon of water. Day 3, I'll add another cup of fertiliser with a gallon of water. And day 4, no fertiliser, just a gallon of water. And day 5, another cup of fertiliser, and you guessed it, another gallon of water. Now when it comes to day 7, 8 and 9, we are reducing that high nitrogen fertiliser to just half a cup. Again, each with a gallon of water. Day 10, it's all about the blood, fish and bone, or the all-rounder fertiliser. I'm using blood, fish and bone because it's what I've got, and that will follow along with another gallon of water. All that process will make this start to decompose into a beautiful, well-fed structure, perfect for many different options to grow in these straw bales. Now it will take another, maybe up to another week, could be even more by the time this has cooled down enough before you can plant. So make sure that you leave plenty of time to do this kind of project, because you cannot plant anything in the roots as it's starting to decompose. It will be too hot and it will burn those roots. So planning this ahead will be so beneficial for your future plants. Now when it does come to planting, what you can do once this is finished and it has cooled down somewhat, you've got options. You can either dig through this straw bale a little bit, making a little hole to plant maybe some of your plants in. If you're doing seeds, all you need to do is sprinkle a layer of compost all the way over the top and then sow directly into that seed. As those seedlings take, those roots will reach down into that real beneficial layer below, full of all that nutrients we've added to this straw bale. So I've been using straw as a mulch on my allotment for this last year, and I've actually found it to be a massive improvement when it comes to my soil structure and to help keep those weeds down. But as we start to harvest from those straw bales, you may even get a second year of use out of those straw bales. But when it gets to the time of they need to be replaced, they are happy to go inside the compost bay, mixed with plenty of greens. Now this is our new compost bay, and we've got plenty of straw already in this bay. We found it rots down really well, especially with the heavy additions of grass that soon, hopefully fingers crossed, we'll start getting. So that straw bale not only gives me extra space to be able to grow something in, it will also feed my compost bay, which for the following year it will go back onto my beds, feeding everything out that I plan to grow for next year. Now, where I'm going to put my straw bales, I've got 3 altogether. I think one is probably going to stay on the floor where this already is. I'm thinking, depending on sweet potato slips, I'm thinking of growing some sweet potatoes here in this straw bale. And I'm hoping, because I'm growing it in the polytunnel, it may have a little bit more heat. Now I know straw bales and sweet potatoes can work, and it may not necessarily be the best way, but I absolutely love the idea of just having to break open these straw bales at the end of the season just to harvest some sweet potatoes. I'm trying to disrupt my soil as least as possible, so by doing it this way, it means I don't have to dig up any sweet potatoes. Now, sweet potatoes are fickle things anyway, especially here in the UK. So it'll be interesting to see if I get any at all sweet potatoes growing in our polytunnel. Now, when it comes to my 3rd bale, that is going outside, I think. I won't have room in here. I've got my beds that are going to be full of melons, chilies, gherkins, okra, all sorts of stuff that are coming into our polytunnel this year. One of the things that you do have to be careful with though, make sure you've got an idea where they are going before you start adding your fertiliser. As these start rotting down, they're not going to be that good to move around, and you're better off starting that process in the place where you actually finally want that straw bale. So when these are ready in a couple of weeks' time, I'll probably grow 2 lots of sweet potatoes in 2 of the bales, and then maybe a squash or maybe something else in the other straw bale. I still haven't decided exactly what I'm going to do yet. But obviously I will have videos on it and I will show how the progress goes. And then you can see what the straw bale turns out like after it's had all that nutrient added to it.